Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I thank the member for Nightcliff for bringing this matter of public importance to the chamber today. And I think it's incredibly important that we talk about the urgent need for stronger, transparent and accountable regulation of the gas and industrial sector in the Northern Territory. Madam Speaker, I just want to start by saying that there has been confusion in public debate and even in this chamber tonight about the distinction between onshore and offshore gas regulation in the Northern Territory. Let me clarify this because misunderstanding it puts Territorians at risk. Offshore gas wells and platforms are regulated by the Commonwealth, but the moment that gas reaches our shorelines, our coastline, through pipelines, through processing plants, through storage tanks, through power generation, emissions infrastructure, waste systems and shipping, it becomes the responsibility of the Northern Territory Government. The Darwin LNG plant, the Barossa backfill works, emissions reporting, methane leaks, fuel and chemical storage, coastal impacts and anything occurring within Darwin Harbour are all regulated here by the Territory. So while some projects begin offshore, every impact ultimately becomes onshore, and it is the Northern Territory Government that must ensure that these systems are safe, that they're cyclone ready, that they're compliant and transparent. Offshore may define where the gas comes from, but onshore determines whether Territorians are protected, and that is our job here in this chamber. Madam Speaker, as we have discussed in this chamber today, this week Territorians are recovering from Cyclone Fina, which is a powerful reminder of the increasing severity of extreme weather events in our region. We know that climate risk is no longer theoretical. We've heard that from everyone here in this chamber, in fact. It's here, it's escalating, and it must shape how we regulate industries operating in and around our harbour here in Darwin and across the Northern Territory. And when we allow heavy industry, gas giants and foreign corporations to operate without proper oversight, without proper safeguards, and as we have now seen repeatedly, without basic compliance with their environmental obligations, we put Territorians at risk. And in the face of cyclones, as we have just seen this weekend, these risks multiply. I want to speak really plainly about what's happening in our harbour, what's happening in our gas sector, because it's really important that we talk about the truth. It's really important that here in this Parliament we have a clear picture of what the regulatory failures are and what we have to address. I've been told by some people in this chamber that when I open my mouth and talk, what everyone hears is blah, 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 blah. So what I want to say is this is something that is really important to Territorians. It's really important to my family, to my children, to your children, to our future. It's something that we can work together on to make sure that we are protecting the people that we are here to represent. I'm not just standing here to say blah, blah, blah. I'm standing here because I deeply care about the Territory, I deeply care about safety, I deeply care about all of our futures, and I want to work with everyone in this chamber to make sure that it's something that we are protecting, that we are looking after both our country and our people here. So some of just what's happened just this year, Madam Speaker, in March, it was revealed that the massive US military project came as fuel tanks designed to store 300 million litres of highly flammable jet fuel, were built to the wrong importance level, were designed to withstand winds only up to 193 kilometres an hour, which were winds that we almost saw in Darwin this weekend, and were built without the correct building permit. A Category 3 cyclone is above, I think this is correct, above 224 kilometres an hour. We were lucky this weekend that that wasn't what affected us here in Darwin, but it easily could have, and it will. Engineering advice is that these tanks should have been designed for winds up to 295 kilometres an hour, and they have not been. The independent engineering report warned that failure of the tanks in a cyclonic wind event could result in over 200 million litres of flammable and or combustible liquid becoming uncontained with catastrophic consequences, and the hazard to human life would be at least substantial, if not extreme. This is just here in our harbour. It's going on right here. So let's be clear, if a cyclone like Fina were to track differently, the consequences of structural failure of the fuel tanks could be unimaginable. And yet on the 5th of September this year, The proponent, Crowley Australia, was granted full environmental approval despite groundwater leaking through the safety liner of multiple tanks. This is not regulation. This is not what Territorians deserve in terms of protection. On the 1st of September, the public learned that Santos's Darwin LNG facilities has been leaking up to 184 kilograms of methane per hour for nearly 20 years, for 2 decades. Methane is between 28 and 84 times more potent than CO2, and this leak was allegedly concealed to avoid jeopardising the Barossa project. Multiple agencies knew about this leak and they did nothing. The NT-EPA, NT-WorkSafe, the Clean Energy Regulator, NOPSEMA, and even CSIRO had knowledge of it. This is the textbook definition of regulatory capture, of when agencies are working not for the job they should be doing, but to support industry. Then on the 12th of September, we learned that the chair of the EPA was simultaneously working with an industry lobbyist whose client list included INPEX, a co-owner of the leaking Darwin LNG plant. He did not disclose this conflict. I think we heard from the member for Nightcliff, she may have quoted this, but experts describe this conflict as one of the most obvious instances of a conflict of interest I have ever seen. And days later, it was revealed that Dr. Vogel had also taken a job advising a mining company, VBX Limited, while still making regulatory decisions in the Northern Territory. It beggars belief that this can happen. And then what happened? On the 19th of September, the NT-EPA renewed Santos's licence for another 5 years without requiring the methane leak to be fixed. This is not an isolated example, it's systemic. Just last month, INPEX admitted to underreporting benzene emissions, a known carcinogen, by 13,400%. I'll just say that again. Benzene emissions did not increase by 13% or 130%, they increased by 13,400%, from 4 tonnes to over 550 tonnes in one reporting period. The company also admitted to underreporting volatile organic compounds by thousands of tonnes. And then, if that wasn't enough, on 13th of October, INPEX reported a 36,000 litre oil spill after heavy rain. Rain exacerbated by climate change washed oil into the harbour and into mangrove ecosystems. And our regulatory response? Silence. Madam Speaker, we had a lucky escape with Cyclone Fina, but it reminds us again how exposed we are. Every tank, every pipeline, every emissions vent, every chemical storage facility, every gas asset in our harbour sits in the path of increasingly severe weather threats. And when regulation fails during calm weather, it doesn't magically stop when the winds hit 250 kilometres an hour. Whether it's 300 million litres of jet fuel in non-compliant tanks, a methane leak that's been allowed to continue for 2 decades, carcinogenic emissions underreported by 13,400%, or oil being washed into our harbour during storms, the pattern is the same. We have a regulatory system that's too close to industry, too under-resourced, too compromised, and too reluctant to enforce consequences. We live in an environment with extreme weather risks, and we must have systems that can withstand the risks we face. What we need here is comprehensive regulatory reform that centres safety, that centres transparency, that centres independence, including mandatory disclosure of all industrial risks and non-compliance incidents. A truly independent EPA chair appointed through a conflict-free process. Immediate investigation into the Darwin LNG methane leak and enforcement action to stop it. A full safety reassessment of the project Camas fuel tanks before any operation can commence. Mandatory cyclone resilience standards for all major fuel, gas and industrial infrastructure. Full public reporting of toxic emissions. No more self-reporting without verification. And an independent inquiry into regulatory capture in the Northern Territory. None of these things are radical. They are the minimum standard that Territorians should expect, and they should expect that we in this chamber are supporting them in keeping them safe. Our harbour is not a dumping ground, our communities are not collateral, and our regulatory system should not be an accessory to negligence. Madam Speaker, as we recover from Cyclone Fina, we're reminded of our responsibility to ensure that every piece of industrial infrastructure in our region is safe, is compliant and is subjected to the highest standards of oversight. Because when systems fail, it is Territorians, it is families, it is workers, it is fishers, it's traditional owners, it's coastal communities who pay the price. Madam Speaker, the time for excuses is over. The time for proper regulation is now. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Are there any other speakers?